Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening up a file that, well, on the surface, it looks like something you'd find in high school English class, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe on a shelf of dusty antiques.
The bonnets and tea file.
Exactly. But if you actually dig into the source material we have today, and I mean really dig in, we're looking at the original 1816 text and this incredibly dense, fascinating critical analysis by Professor Stephen Marcus, it reads more like a manual.
A manual on what, though?
Social psychology, game theory, even like the architecture of the human ego. It's all in there.
It really is. And I'm so glad we're just stripping away that bonnets and tea parties reputation right from the get-go. Because the document we're analyzing today, Jane Austen's Emma, it isn't really a romance in the way we think of it.
Right.
It's more like a crime scene investigation of the human mind.
That is exactly the mission today. We are taking the first few chapters of the original text, plus this amazing introduction by Marcus, and we are going to try and extract the actionable insights, the stuff about judgment, narcissism, and that really, really dangerous human tendency to write stories in our heads and just mistake them for reality.
The imaginist problem. Oh, we will definitely get there. That's central to everything we're going to discuss.
We will, but first,
Yeah.
we have to look at the raw data, the text itself. Most people, they know the movie versions, Gwyneth Paltrow or Anya Taylor-Joy or even Clueless.
Right. All great adaptations.
But the source text is, it's darker, it's sharper. Austen famously said about this whole project, I am going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like.
Which is just a massive risk for an author, isn't it? I mean, think about the landscape of fiction, both back then and even now. You're usually supposed to want a Cinderella.
You want the underdog.
You want the underdog. In almost every other romance novel, the protagonist is poor or abused or misunderstood, and the whole engine of the book is watching them rise. You root for them to overcome all these external obstacles. And Emma it breaks that engine completely.
Because she starts at the finish line.
She's already there. Emma Woodhouse is at the top of the heap from page 1. She has no tragic backstory. She doesn't have a wicked stepmother. She is, for all intents and purposes, the apex predator of her little social circle.
So she's not trying to marry for money.
She doesn't need to. She doesn't need to please anyone to survive. So the tension isn't, oh, will she survive this cruel world? The tension is, will she destroy herself through her own hubris?
Okay, so let's look at that opening sentence. I have the text right here.
Yeah.
And it's cited constantly as one of the best openers in English literature, and I mean, for good reason. It lays out the entire thesis in one breath.
Go on.
Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence.
Stop right there. That sentence is a trap.
Seemed.
That is the trapdoor.
Yeah.
Seem to unite. If you read that too quickly, you just skim right over it. Austen is handing you this perfect resume, handsome, clever, rich, and then she just drops out one little word. Seemed.
And it changes everything.
It immediately signals irony. It tells the analytical reader, hey, you, pay attention. Do not trust this surface. It implies that while all the external markers are perfect, there's a rot somewhere underneath.
A vexation, I think the text calls it a bit later on.
Exactly, a hidden distress.
Yeah.
And the text is so explicit about what that rot is. It doesn't say she has a secret enemy plotting against her. It says her real evils were, get this, the power of having rather too much her own way and a disposition to think a little too well of herself.
That's such a fascinating definition of evil. I mean, usually evil is a dragon or a war or poverty, right?
Yeah.
Here, the evil is internal. It's
Yeah.
unchecked agency.
It's the absence of resistance. Think about it in terms of like child development or even modern leadership training. If you never, ever hear the word no, if you never hit a wall, you never develop proper boundaries.
You can't tell where you end and the world begins.
You never distinguish between what I want and what is true. She has lived for 21 years with, quote, very little to distress or vex her. And that total lack of friction has it's warped her perception of reality.
So are we diagnosing her? Is Emma a narcissist?
Well, the notes we're looking at reference Lionel Trilling, who's a real heavyweight critic, and he argues it's more nuanced than just sticking a clinical disorder on her.
Yeah.
It's a very specific kind of self-love that's actually, in some ways, incredibly vital.
Yeah.
She delights in her own brain.
Yeah.
She isn't plagued by that kind of gothic self-doubt where the heroine is always thinking she's unworthy or not good enough. Emma loves being Emma.
Which is magnetic. I mean, the confidence is why people are drawn to her, why they follow her.
It is. But that self-love is also her blindfold. Because she loves her own mind so much, she just assumes her mind dictates reality. She views other people not as autonomous agents with their own internal lives,
But as what?
as extensions of her will.
Like NPCs in a video game.
Exactly, non-player characters. That's a perfect analogy. She thinks she can move them around the board, assign them roles, and they'll just perform the script she's written for them.
Wow.
And nowhere is this clearer than in her little kingdom, Hartfield. We really have to talk about the environment that created this monster. We have to talk about Mr. Woodhouse.
Her father, yeah. Chapter 1 describes him as universally civil, but a valetudinarian.
A valetudinarian. It's a polite, 19th century term for hypochondriac, but it's even dapper than that. It's someone whose entire identity is constructed around their own fragility.
And the control that comes with that fragility. The source text has these details that are hilarious but also kind of maddening about gruel and wedding cake.
The wedding cake incident is the absolute key to his psychology. It tells you everything you need to know.
He literally tries to stop guests from eating wedding cake at a wedding.
He does. And his logic is, because rich wedding cake disagrees with his stomach, it must therefore disagree with everyone's stomach. He cannot conceive of a physiological reality that is separate from his own.
It's insane.
He tries to push thin gruel on his perfectly healthy guests, because that's what he likes, what he can tolerate.
It's funny, but it's kind of terrifying when you think about it, that mindset. If it hurts my stomach, it must hurt yours.
Precisely. It's what the text calls a gentle selfishness. He isn't mean. He's actually very sweet and polite on the surface, but he is an absolute tyrant of stasis.
A tyrant of stasis. I like that.
He hates change. The text explicitly says he views matrimony as the origin of change, and therefore it's disagreeable. To him, change isn't just an annoyance, it's a physical threat to his safety and well-being.
So you've got Emma, this 21-year-old woman with all this energy and intelligence, living with a man in his late 60s who is, for all intents and purposes, an energy vampire. He wants everything frozen in time.
And this creates a very, very strange dynamic in the household. The critical notes point this out really clearly. Emma isn't really the daughter in this relationship. She's the mother.
Or even the husband.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I think you're right. Think about the function she serves. She manages the domestic sphere of the estate. She protects him. She manages his moods, his anxieties. She's the one making the executive decisions.
Because she's never been parented.
Never. Her governess, Miss Taylor, was more of a best friend, a sister figure than a disciplinarian. So Emma has been the de facto mistress of Hartfield since she was a teenager. She is the authority figure in that house.
Which explains why the book opens with a crisis. For her, anyway. Miss Taylor leaves.
The stasis breaks. The bubble is pierced. Miss Taylor marries Mr. Weston. And look at how Mr. Woodhouse reacts. He's mourning it like a death. He keeps saying, "Poor Miss Taylor," as if she's been exiled to Siberia.
Instead of marrying a nice guy who lives, half a mile down the road?
Exactly. He sees marriage as a tragedy because it disrupts his routine. It's a change he can't control.
But Emma has to spin this, right? She can't admit she's lonely or that she's lost her only companion, so she claims credit. She tells everyone, "I made the match."
And this is the inciting incident of her delusion. This is where it all starts. She looks at this complex, organic event, two people falling in love over the course of 4 years, and she simplifies it into a syllogism. I thought of it, therefore I caused it. She has to regain control over the change, so she rewrites history to make herself the author of it.
And this brings in the antagonist, or I guess the reality check.
Mr. Knightley.
Mr. Knightley, yes. He's 37, her brother-in-law, the landowner next door, and he is the only person in the entire book who does not worship Emma. He is the voice of objective reality. And he just shuts her down instantly on this whole matchmaking thing. He has this one line that I highlighted because it feels like something you'd hear in like a business seminar or something. He says, "Success supposes endeavor."
It is a devastatingly simple critique, isn't it? He's saying, you didn't do any work. You didn't introduce them. You didn't facilitate the courtship. You made a mental prediction, a guess, it happened to come true, and now you're trying to claim authorship. He calls it what it is, a lucky guess.
And Emma just brushes him off. She claims she smoothed many little matters.
She doubles down. Of course she does. And this, right here, this little exchange, sets up the central conflict of our entire deep dive. It's autonomy versus control. Knightley believes people are independent agents. Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston chose each other. Emma believes she is the puppeteer. She refuses to accept that the world can and does move without her pushing it.
Okay, this brings us to that core concept from Professor Marcus in the introduction. He has this specific term for her. He calls Emma an imaginist.
It's a brilliant term, just perfect. He argues that Emma is essentially a novelist menke, a potential novelist who doesn't actually write.
So instead of writing characters on a page,
She uses real people. Her mind is described as being delighted with its own ideas. She gets bored with the slow, dull, predictable reality of her village, Highbury. I mean, nothing really happens there. So to entertain herself, she spices it up. She invents plots.
and Marcus points out that she structures these plots in triangles,
Triangles, yes. It's like a geometry of the mind.
a safety mechanism.
That's a good way to put it. Triangle 1 was Emma, Mr. Weston, and Miss Taylor. Emma is at the apex. She's the one directing the other two. Now that Miss Taylor is gone, that triangle is broken. She needs a new cast. She needs a new project.
Right on cue, enter Harriet Smith.
Triangle 2 is now under construction, and Harriet is the absolute perfect victim for an imaginist. The text calls her the natural daughter of nobody knows whom.
Which is just the polite 19th century way of saying she's illegitimate.
Right. She has no known family. She's a parlor boarder at a local school. She has no status, no money, and, let's be brutally honest, not a whole lot of brain. She's pretty, and she's pliant. She is a blank slate.
And Emma sees a blank slate and thinks, oh, I can write on this.
I can improve her, but you have to notice the inherent violence in that concept. To improve Harriet, Emma first has to detach Harriet from her actual life, specifically her real burgeoning relationship with the Martin family, the farmers who actually know and care about her, and then paste her into this total fantasy romance with Mr. Elton, the local vicar.
It's like she's casting a play in her head. Okay, Harriet, you're the princess. Mr. Elton, you're the handsome prince. And I, Emma, am the director.
But the actors aren't following the script. They've got their own ideas. And this brings us right to the main theme of the novel, misreading. The whole book is about the catastrophic failure of perception.
This is the part that frustrates me, though. Emma is clever. The book tells us that over and over. So how can she be so stupid about this?
See, it's not stupidity, it's penetration.
Penetration? What do you mean?
That's the word the text uses, and it uses it ironically. Emma prides herself on her penetration, her supposed ability to see through the surface to the hidden secret truth underneath.
Okay.
So she sees Mr. Elton offering up a riddle, a literal charade, and she immediately decodes it as a secret message of love for Harriet. She's so busy looking for the hidden romance that she completely misses the blindingly obvious surface truth.
Which is that Mr. Elton is a social climber.
Mr. Elton is an economic creature. He's a vicar, which is a respectable profession, but he's ambitious, and he needs money. He wants to marry up. Harriet Smith has no family and no money. Emma Woodhouse has 30,000 pounds. The surface data could not be clearer. Elton wants Emma.
But Emma's penetration tells her he must love the poor girl. Because that's the better story.
It's a better story, and she projects what she wants to see. It is confirmation bias on steroids, and it's all fueled by her own snobbery. She cannot imagine Mr. Elton aspiring to her, because in her mind, she's a goddess, and he's just the vicar. She's way too high above him.
And she can't imagine him rejecting Harriet.
Because she thinks her patronage, her approval, makes Harriet valuable. She mistakes her own social credit for actual spendable currency.
Let's talk about that currency, because the notes from Marcus make a really big deal about the economic background of Highbury. It's not just a pretty backdrop, it's a system in flux.
Oh, this is the stuff most readers miss, especially if you get distracted by the romance plot. Highbury is in the middle of a major shift. It's changing from a kind of feudal village to a more modern town. You have the old world, places like Hartfield, which is Emma's home, and Donwell Abbey, which is Knightley's. Landed gentry. Their power is static. It comes from land, from history, from their name.
And then you have the upstarts, the Coles.
The Coles are Emma's nightmare, wrapped in a dinner invitation. They are in trade, they have new money, and their fortune is rising fast. They're buying their way into influence. They have a bigger house now. They're giving better parties.
And Emma tries to hold the line, right? At first she says she won't dine with them. She wants to teach them their place.
She wants to freeze the social hierarchy. If new money suddenly equals status, then her bloodline, her history, it all matters less. She can feel the ground shifting under her feet. But notice what happens. She caves. She ends up going to the dinner party.
And she has a good time.
She has a great time. And there's this wonderful little detail that Marcus points out about the folding screen. The Coles buy a special folding screen just to protect Mr. Woodhouse from drafts.
They literally buy her dad's comfort.
They demonstrate their utility. The old world, represented by Woodhouse, is frail and fragile. The new world, the Coles, has the cash and the energy to protect him. It's this very subtle signal that the upstarts are now necessary. The old gentry can't survive without the energy and capital of the new economy.
Then you have the flip side of that coin, the downstarts, the Bateses.
Mrs. Bates and Miss Bates, the widow and the adult daughter of a former vicar. They used to be at the center of Highbury society, but now they've sunk into what's called genteel poverty. They live in a small, cramped apartment over a shop. They have few, if any, servants.
Miss Bates. She's the character everyone loves to hate, or maybe hates to love.
She's the great talker upon little matters. She cannot stop speaking. It's just this endless stream of consciousness about apples and her mother's shawl and a leg of pork and Jane Fairfax's letters. But notice her attitude. She has nothing. No money, no status, no beauty. Yet the text says she is a mine of felicity. She's happy.
Which just drives Emma crazy.
It offends Emma's sense of order. How dare she be happy without any of the blessings Emma has? But I think it's deeper than that. For Emma, Miss Bates is a mirror. She represents what happens to a single woman who loses her money. She becomes a bore, a dependent, irrelevant. Emma looks at Miss Bates and sees a ghost of a possible future.
The social landscape gets even more complicated with Robert Martin. This is the guy Emma rejects on Harriet's behalf.
This is the class war in a single subplot. Emma calls him clownish, gross, vulgar. She hears the word farmer and immediately thinks peasant. She imagines him as this muddy, uneducated brute, incapable of reading or refined thought.
But Knightley, the actual landowner, the guy who employs him, respects him.
Knightley defends him passionately. He makes a point of calling Martin a gentleman farmer.
Is that a real term, or is that just Knightley being nice?
Oh, in 1816.
Yeah.
Absolutely a real term. It's a very specific status marker. It means he isn't just a laborer pushing a plow with his own hands. He manages the land. He's an employer. The text says he reads agricultural reports. He reads novels like The Vicar of Wakefield. He's an educated, intelligent, essential part of the modern economy. He's renting a large farm and making it profitable.
So Knightley sees the economic engine. Emma just sees the aesthetics. She sees muddy boots.
Precisely. Knightley knows that men like Robert Martin are the backbone of his estate, Donwell Abbey. They generate the rent. They manage the food supply. Emma wants a static, picturesque world where farmers are silent, muddy props in the background. Knightley acknowledges the mobility and intelligence of the rising professional class. He sees a partner. She sees a smudge on the landscape.
Speaking of economics, there's a little mystery in the notes that I absolutely loved. Marcus calls it the mystery of Knightley's horses.
It's such a great little detective detail that he pulls out of the text. It's mentioned almost as a throwaway line that Knightley keeps no horses for his carriage. He walks almost everywhere.
Which makes him sound kind of poor. I mean, he's supposed to be the rich guy. He owns the Abbey. There's a huge estate.
And Marcus analyzes this as Knightley being strapped for cash, or more accurately, he's asset-rich, cash-poor.
Ah, I see.
He owns the massive estate, Donwell Abbey. But land eats money. You have to pay for drainage, for fences, for repairing the tenant cottages, for the taxes. Knightley is pouring all his liquid cash back into the business, back into the estate itself. He isn't spending it on what we'd call conspicuous consumption.
And a carriage with a team of horses was basically the Ferrari of the day.
The Ferrari of the day. Exactly. Keeping a team of carriage horses was incredibly expensive. You needed the horses themselves, the feed, the grooms to care for them, the stabling. The Coles, the new money, have them. The Eltons get them. They're flashing their cash. Knightley, on the other hand, practices what the text calls unostentatious kindness.
Meaning?
When he does use a carriage, it's usually because he's borrowed or rented one specifically to help the Bateses or Jane Fairfax get around. He views his wealth as a tool for his duty to the community, not for his own personal display.
So we have this absolute powder keg. You have Emma's arrogance, the class tension bubbling under the surface, all these misunderstood romances, and it all just explodes at Box Hill.
Box Hill, yes! The moral climax of the entire book.
It's supposed to be a fun picnic, but it feels more like a battleground.
The setting creates a pressure cooker. It's a hot day. Everyone is disjointed and grumpy. The social glue is just melting. And Frank Churchill, who we haven't talked about much, but he's basically the male version of Emma, a flirt and a manipulator, is whipping everyone into this weird, tense frenzy. He's flirting outrageously with Emma, mostly to hide his secret engagement to Jane Fairfax.
And then they play that awful game. Say one clever thing or three dull things.
It's a command to perform, to be entertaining on the spot. And poor Miss Bates, sweet, harmless Miss Bates, she tries to play along. She laughs and says something like, "Oh, well, I shall be sure to say 3 dull things as soon as ever I open my mouth." She's being self-deprecating. She's trying to lower the tension by making herself the butt of the joke.
And Emma she snaps.
She strikes, and it's surgical. She says, "Ah, ma'am, but there may be a difficulty. Pardon me, but you will be limited as to number, only 3 at once."
Oof, it's so cold.
It is devastating, just devastatingly cool.
It's basically her saying, you're so boring that if you open your mouth, a whole avalanche of dullness comes out and we can't stop it.
And it's witty. That's the real problem. It's a very clever line. If she had said that to Frank Churchill, it would have just been sharp banter. But she's punching down hard. Miss Bates is poor, she's dependent, she's elderly, Emma's young, rich, and powerful.
And the text says the whole group just falls silent. It doesn't land as a joke. It's just awkward and mean.
And Miss Bates whispers to Mr. Knightley later, "I must make myself very disagreeable or she would not have said such a thing to an old friend." She's crushed, and she blames herself. She knows she's a bore, but to have the Queen of Highbury pointed out so publicly, it's a social execution.
And this leads to the moment where Knightley finally properly intervenes. He does not let this slide.
He waits until they are leaving. He rides up to her carriage, leans in, and he doesn't just scold her for being rude, he scolds her for abusing her power.
He says that line, "How could you be so insolent in your wit?" to a woman of her character, age, and situation.
Situation, that's the key word. He's reminding Emma that Miss Bates has fallen from her station, she is vulnerable, she relies on the kindness and charity of Hartfield, and Emma, who should be her protector, that is the duty of the gentry, of noblesse oblige, has just mocked her in public for entertainment.
It's a failure of humanity.
Absolutely. He tells her, "I have known you from a child," basically says, "For the first time, I am ashamed of you." He hits her exactly where it hurts. Her pride in being a lady, a person of quality.
And Emma, for once, she doesn't fight back.
No defense. She doesn't argue. She doesn't make excuses. She cries all the way home. This is the turning point. This is the moment the Imaginist realizes that her wit has actual casualties in the real world. She moves from intellectual vanity to emotional humility. She felt it at her heart, the text says. The criticism lands.
And this crack in her armor, it just lets all the truth flood in. And the biggest truth bomb of all is about Jane Fairfax.
Jane Fairfax, her foil. She's everything Emma is. Handsome, clever, accomplished, but she's poor.
And the notes point out that her situation is what Jane herself calls the slave market.
That's Jane's own phrase. She calls the governess trade, which is her only career option, the slave market. She has to sell her intellect to rich families to raise their children, all because she doesn't have a dowry. And Emma has disliked her the whole book, supposedly because Jane is reserved.
And because Jane is better at the piano, let's be honest.
Let's be real, yeah. Emma is jealous. Jane is the superior talent, but the big revelation is that Jane has been secretly engaged to Frank Churchill, the guy Emma was flirting with this entire time.
Which makes Emma look like the biggest fool in all of England.
She's a dupe, that's the word used. She spent months imagining Frank was in love with her. She even gossiped to Frank about Jane, making up this whole elaborate story that Jane was having an affair with a married man, a Mr. Dixon.
So she was telling this secret fiancé that his fiancé was cheating on him.
Yes. The cringe factor is just off the charts. It is absolute, total humiliation. Her vaunted penetration, her ability to see the secret truth, was a complete joke. She saw nothing. She was the one being played. She was just a character in someone else's plot.
But the humiliation, it clears the deck. It strips away all the fantasies so she can finally see what's been right in front of her the whole time. Mr. Knightley.
And weirdly, it's Harriet who triggers it. Harriet, her little project, comes to her and confesses that she is in love with Mr. Knightley. And worse, she thinks Knightley loves her back.
And because Emma's own track record of reading people is now in flames, she thinks, oh my God, Harriet might actually be right.
It is the dread of being supplanted. That's the phrase in the text. It says, it darted through her with the speed of an arrow that Mr. Knightley must marry no one but herself.
Notice that phrasing, though. It's not, I realize I love him. It's, he must marry no one but me.
It starts as possession. You're right. It starts as a desperate need to be first in his eyes. She realizes that if Knightley marries Harriet, Emma loses her place in the world. She loses her guide, her critic, her mental partner.
So she's facing total isolation. Jane is marrying Frank. Harriet might marry Knightley. Her father's frail and in declining health. That perfect life from page 1 is suddenly looking very, very empty.
And then the proposal scene.
Which is just a masterclass in comic misunderstanding. Knightley comes over. He thinks Emma is heartbroken because Frank Churchill's engagement has been revealed. He thinks Emma was in love with Frank.
And at the same time, Emma thinks Knightley is coming to ask for her blessing to marry Harriet. They're having two completely different parallel conversations.
But Emma does something, well, heroic for her. She just shuts up.
She sacrifices her own feelings for the first time. She thinks he's about to deliver the final blow to her happiness by confessing his love for Harriet. But she sees that he is struggling to speak. She sees that he is in pain, so she says, "I will hear whatever you like." She invites the pain in to help him.
That's the growth. That's the redemption arc right there. She puts someone else's emotional needs before her own comfort.
And her reward is the truth. He isn't talking about Harriet at all. He confesses his love for Emma. "If I loved you less," he says, "I might be able to talk about it more."
It's the great romantic payoff.
Yeah.
And the critical notes are very, very clear on this. It is not a fairy tale ending.
No, it's a logistical nightmare.
Because of Mr. Woodhouse.
The valetudinarian. He won't let Emma leave Hartfield. He can't be transplanted. He's too fragile. It would kill him. So they have to pull what you could call the gender flip.
Knightley moves in with them.
I mean, think about what that really means. Mr. Knightley, the owner of the great Donwell Abbey, the master of his own huge estate, agrees to leave his ancestral home and move into his father-in-law's much smaller house to eat thin gruel and listen to endless complaints about drafts.
That is a massive, massive sacrifice.
It is. He gives up his independence for her. In a way, Emma gets to have her cake and eat it too. She gets to keep her home, keep her father, and get the guy. She wins everything.
But Marcus, in the intro, he calls it a compromise.
Because it's shadowed by mortality.
Yeah.
Mr. Woodhouse is in declining life. Their happiness is contained within the walls of what is essentially a sick room. It's an adult happiness. It's not the happily ever after where they ride off into the sunset. It's, okay, we'll make this work while we take care of the old man. It's grounded in duty and reality.
So if we zoom out, we've gone from the text to the triangles to the class war to the psychology. What is the big takeaway for you, the listener? What do we actually do with Emma?
I think there are three big things to take away from this kind of deep dive. First, and most importantly, beware the imaginist in your own brain. We all do this. We write stories about our boss, our partner, our friends. We assign them motives. We cast them in our own little plays. Emma teaches us to check our sources. Reality is almost always more boring and way more complex than the fictions we create.
Stop trying to be the author of other people's lives.
Exactly. Second, you have to respect the friction of change. Mr. Woodhouse represents that deep human desire for total comfort, for total stasis. But life has changed. The coals will rise. Miss Taylor will get married. You have to adapt, or you become a tyrant of gruel.
And the third?
I think the third, and this is the one that really sticks with me, it's about the unknown. Marcus ends his introduction with this really haunting image. There's a scene near the end where the great iron sweep gate at Hartfield opens, and the text just says, "It opened." Passive voice.
But gates don't just open themselves.
Exactly. A servant opened it, a nobody. Emma is a novel about a world that is propped up by invisible labor. The servants, the gypsies that scare Harriet, the poor clerk John Abdy who has rheumatism. While Emma and Knightley are having their happy ending in the parlor, the world outside those walls is still hard. The governess trade is still a slave market.
That's a pretty sobering thought to end on.
It asks the final question, really. Is Emma truly cured of all her faults? Or is she just rich enough to survive them? Is her happy ending a result of her moral growth? Or is it just the ultimate expression of her privilege?
And that is the question we're going to leave you with. Is it real redemption, or is it just the safety of a very large bank account?
I'll let the listener decide on that one.
Thank you so much for this. This was an incredible deep dive. I will never look at a bonnet, or for that matter, a bowl of gruel, the same way again.
My pleasure. It was great fun.
And to you listening, thanks for endeavoring with us. Remember, success supposes endeavor. Keep doing the work. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.